Ask yourself why it seems like the church is sitting stagnant, or why it seems like it doesn't have enough backbone for what it believes in, or why it almost seems wrong to stand up for something that you believe is right, to be against homosexuality, abortion, or same-sex marriage. Well, I can tell you one thing, that I believe that I've found the answer to the big, mighty mystery question, why? A realization that I've come to is that our society, the way that we live today, how we live, it has been formed and shaped over a long period of time by two different forces of good and forces of evil. All are higher powers that are wanting to gain control of the human population and the way that we live our lives. It's no accident that we live in the society that we live in today, the way that we live our lives. Something that I've realized is all of the subliminal messages given through media, given through the educational system, are either used from two different forces of good or forces of evil. One example of this is 30 years ago there was a group of homosexuals that were wanting to gain control over the way that society thinks in order to conform them to their way of thinking. It was a group of maybe 100 to 150 homosexuals, all people of higher power, influence, and wealth, where they wanted to eventually conform society over a long period of time to become used to their way of thinking. This was the process of brainwashing. No, I'm not talking about brainwashing as in laying on a doctor's bed and having a bunch of needles and things attached to your head and body to where they wipe out your memory. No, I'm talking about subliminal brainwashing, to where it's things, subliminal messages and things that the way you live your life and experiences that form the way you are and that form the way you think and form the way you act and eventually make up who you are as a person. Now, the first of these three brainwashing steps is something called desensitization. Okay, some of us are familiar with that word, some maybe not. So for those that are not, what desensitization is it's like a seed. A thought, okay? Think of a thought like a seed. And each message that you hear, each experience that you have, okay, everything that you see around you is going to be something that plants a thought in your mind. And that's something to get used to. Now, 30 years ago, this group of homosexuals, what they did is they planned through two primary factors. There are many others, but the two primary ones were through the media and educational system, that they were going to desensitize society to their way of thinking. In other words, they're going to get society used to their way of thinking by planting thoughts in their heads through the media, through the educational system. One example of the media is that, say on a TV show, maybe a sitcom, you would see a homosexual character and he would be someone who's the most creative, most outgoing, talented person, best looking guy in the whole show, and that was essentially a thought to say, hey, homosexuals are actually normal, good people. And that was for you to understand their way of thinking, the first, that they're actually normal people. The first step to brainwashing. So the second step is called jamming. This is essentially, okay, now that we've gotten you used to our way of thinking, now the people who are against our way of thinking, we're going to push them out of society and they're going to be considered haters, they're going to be considered weird, they're going to be considered the radical people. Sound familiar? Primarily this has been targeted on all religious groups, primarily Christians. Now, something to consider is, again, through the media and educational system, they planted thoughts. If you saw a Christian character on pretty much any TV show, it would be someone who is arrogantly following this book, ignorantly, not knowing what they are believing or thinking, that it's just all faith-based and there's no logic to it whatsoever. And that's to plant a thought and a seed inside of you saying, okay, these people who are against homosexuality, they're considered the crazy ones, the arrogant ones, they're just blindly following something that they don't think is true, right, or logical. And that is considered jamming, where you begin to hate the thing that they want you to hate. Now, the third and final step to brainwashing is called conversion. This is ultimately the long-term goal to any sort of brainwashing project or scheme. Now, something to consider is, now that desensitization and the jamming process has completed, you now are for something and you are against the people who are against it. Conversion is ultimately saying, okay, this way of thinking is a good, moral, and right way of thinking. And again, you can guess it, through the media and educational system, those messages were put out there saying that this is good, right, and moral. You know, you realize that all the TV shows you watch, the scripts are written by people who have opinions. But I want to tell you something. That once the brainwashing process is completed on a society, it is impossible in order for that way of thinking to go back to the old way of thinking. Impossible to change a nation. But I can tell you this, that argument doesn't matter. Okay? If you try to argue with a homosexual, you will always lose because their way of thinking is already made up. But the argument that matters is the gospel. You will never lose the argument of saying that God is love. He sent His Son to die for us because we made a mistake, and He rose again so that we might have intimacy and love with the Father. You will never lose that argument, because what that argument does is it creates a conscious decision. It's not based on an opinion. It's not based on a belief of some kind. It's based on a conscious decision to either accept God's love or reject God's love. And that is the argument that matters. Now, my friends, if you all enjoyed that video, my good friend behind the camera, Chakwuka John, he has a wonderful YouTube channel called Aglow TV. He has amazing inspirational videos full of wisdom, things that are going to inspire you to move forward in life and go forward with your dreams. If you want to support him, show him a comment of what you thought, give him a like, subscribe to his channel. He is definitely worth your time to be making the investment, and thank you.